Welcome to the Logic in Life Coaching Podcast, Episode 7.
Everyone wants happiness and success, and we know how to get you there. Come listen to the Leadership Society of Arizona as we teach a proven logic to help you simplify life, overcome challenges, and predict the future. You're listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. My name is Chuck Zalanis, and we have a special guest, Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi. Dr. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Chuck, I come on every week.
Come on, it's a running joke. Okay. All right. Today, we're going to have a question that has been a burning question for me for a long time, ever since taking the course. And you taught me about this concept of no influence. And this concept of no influence really disturbed me at the beginning, because I was thinking, well, my life doesn't matter. It doesn't impact anyone or anything. And I might as well just do nothing. And so I kind of was a little disturbed by this when I first heard it. So I wanted to ask the question, if you can't influence anyone, can anyone make a positive impact for others with their lives?
Good question, Chuck. So the thing to remember is everybody impacts everyone else. But the key of no influence is who determines if that impact even happens. And the key is each person controls and determines their own life. Hence, the individual is the one and is the person who determines who interacts with them and if they're going to be impacted by certain individuals, right? So yes, you definitely have impact on other people. But that impact is not determined by you, it's determined by who?
The other person.
The other person. And just as well as when you go through life, people have an impact on you. But you're the one who's determining that impact. And so
Right.
this is it's something that you really need to understand, because yes, you will have impact on people. But depending on who you are, depends on who allows you to come into their environment, right? And so you can't really take credit for having that impact, because it's not really you driving that, it's the other individual. But yes, what you do does have impact. For example, say you're a young kid and you're very talented at sports. Well, if you're really talented, say you're a tennis player or something, you, because you determine your own life, are going to attract a good coach. You're going to attract people who are attracted to very talented young tennis players. And so if you're that coach, Chuck, if you're a really good coach, more than likely you will be attracted to this young talent and be able to have a good impact on them. But if you're not a good coach, then you're not even going to enter this person's life, and then they're going to find someone else. And so depending on who you are depends on who you have an impact with, right? If you really are good at something, more than likely, you're going to be attracted to other people who are really good at that same thing. And the impact will be determined on, one, how good you are, and two, then who allows you, being so good, to come into their environment. This is why usually, if you're a really good coach, that people will look at you and say you had an impact on a lot of young players that are really good, because good coaches usually are attracted to very good players and very good sports athletes. Does this make sense?
Yes. I just want to recap what you're saying, just so I'm understanding correctly. So what you're saying is that it's not so much that the coach influences the players. The players are already innately good athletes. And so
Yes.
since they are innately good athletes, when they are looking for the best coach, they naturally find themselves attracted to this really good coach, and it makes it so they really shine because they're taking the right principles and they're applying them into their own lives, but they're determining how much they apply them, how much they do sit-ups, push-ups, all these different things that make it so they are physically fit, and then they perform on the field based off of themselves, really.
You got it. And it's that individual that determines the impact that the coach actually has on them. For example, you might get a player who's really lazy and they don't want to do anything. So they're going to meet up with this coach. The coach is going to tell them to do all these things and get on them for doing things. The player's not going to listen to them. And the impact there is not going to be good. But the coach didn't determine that impact. It was really the player, right? The player determined that they weren't going to listen to the coach, that they wouldn't take advantage of what the coach could actually provide them. And so it's really important when you're like a mentor or when you want to be a leader, it's really important to realize that you don't determine what impact you have on people. It's the other people who do. The only thing you can determine is, have you developed yourself? So you attract people who are willing to listen, who want to have a good impact with you, who want to have a good experience being one of your students or being someone who interacts with you. That's all you can determine, is who you are, and the other person determines the impact that they will have with you as well. The person I like to bring up the most is Mozart. Mozart was inherently gifted at music. If you read the stories of when Mozart was young, everybody could tell from a very young age that Mozart was inherently gifted at music. He didn't need any teachers to teach him that. He naturally could pick up any instrument, anything dealing with music. But what did Mozart do? Mozart sought after the most well-trained and the best coaches in the piano and the organ, in all the different techniques of the music. And these people had a good impact on Mozart and helped him develop. But Mozart was the one who was driving all that. Mozart was the one who sought after them. Mozart was the one who was willing to listen to what they had to say. And so, yes, everything that you go through in life will have an impact on you. But the key to no influence is that you, one, determine what's going to have an impact on you, and two, you determine the exact impact it will have. Does this make sense?
Yeah. And I could think of that even in terms of like negative events on your life. So some people may take a really like a car accident or something like that. They could take it and they could be traumatized for the whole rest of their lives. They could choose to take that as a negative thing, that they say, I can't develop from this moment. I can't do anything. All of my life that was worth living was before that car accident. Or they could take it as a driving thing, like, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to develop and become the best person that I can be in spite of this.
You got it. You know, if you get in a car wreck and it actually damages your body, that definitely had an impact. You can't say it didn't have an impact on you.
Right.
But the key to the no influence is you're the one who determined that you were driving on this time of day, in this location. Maybe you weren't paying as well of attention. Whatever it might have been, you were driving this whole interaction of the car accident. So you're the one who's determining as you move forward in life what happens. And like you said, you also determine the impact it will have afterwards. How you're going to take this. Did you learn from it? Did it make you a better person? Did it help you to understand life more? And that all comes from the inside. That all comes from the individual.
Yeah, I was just listening to this talk on Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg.
Oh,
And
yes.
it was talking about how this one woman, she was in a family that her entire family was killed by a rivaling, like a war-torn town, and she
Wow.
actually was hiding in the sink area and had to listen to all of her family get murdered by these
Wow.
people.
That's
And
very tragic.
a lot of people were upset at her because she wasn't angry. She wasn't upset. What she did is she, instead of becoming angry or acting out against these rival tribes or gang, what she did is she made it her life's mission to find ways to interact with people so they can have their needs met, so they can experience love and peace and not do those same sort of things. So something very tragic, someone chose to take that in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Yes. Wow, that's a very good story in terms of how this person reacted and and what she chose to do after a tragic event. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I have a couple of tips for everybody today.
Okay. Yeah. How can we make a more positive impact on people?
Okay, so understanding you have no influence on people. This is how you can make a greater positive impact. First, don't push people when you feel resistance. Because you have no influence on them, the only way you can have a positive impact is if they want it. So if you're trying to teach someone something, if you're trying to help them with something, if you're feeling resistance, like they're not answering your calls, they're not responding to your texts, they don't feel happy when you're helping them, then you probably want to not push them too much. You probably want to let them be. Because if they're resisting you, it's telling you that they're not ready to accept what you have to offer. And anything you do, because you have no influence on them, will not have a positive impact for them because they don't want it. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
yeah, I've seen this plenty of times in my family where someone's like, oh, no, they definitely want us to help them. You go and help them, and then you totally ruin what they were trying to do.
Right. Yeah. And I can relate to this when sometimes we're trying to parent Lila, my daughter, and we're trying to tell her what to do, and she's completely resistant to it. She's like, she wants to do things her own way, and when I take something from her, she just wants it back more. So I
Yes.
experienced that if I'm really resistant to what she's doing, then I
Yes.
don't feel like I can parent her as well.
I completely understand. My 1-year-old son, if I try to do something that he doesn't want, he'll cry, and he'll cry really loud. That's not a positive impact.
Yeah.
Now, the second tip is very much like the first, but it's a little bit different. Don't help people too much unless they ask. Oftentimes, even if they don't resist you, if you actually try to help someone too much, especially if they don't ask you, you end up finding that you put a lot of effort in for very little reward. I've seen this many times with teachers trying to help students. They put all this effort into a student, only find the student doesn't really do a lot with it. They gave the student all these opportunities, and the student just slept in or didn't really do a lot with it. And this is because you can't influence people. So if someone's not asking for your help, then the more you put into this person, the more you're just giving them something that they're not really asking for, and it's not going to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
Now, the third is learn to really observe and understand people. What I mean is, people naturally will tell you what they need. But it's not for you to influence them and tell them what they need. It's for you to observe what they need and give them what they're asking for. I find that many times people will ask for things, but because we don't listen and we don't observe, we don't hear it. And so we end up not really being able to give them what they want. And so if you want to learn to have a positive impact on people, the third tip is learn to observe, to listen, and to really understand who they are. All these are really simple. Now, the fourth is even more simple. One that's not going to be surprising. You might even be able to guess what this is, Chuck.
Is it find a mentor?
You got it. The fourth is find a mentor. Definitely find a mentor, and realizing that the mentor cannot influence you. Be looking for ways to ask your mentor for help, because a wise mentor won't give it to you unless you ask for it. So make sure that you find a mentor and you're utilizing them. You're asking them for help. You're wanting to listen to the mentor's advice. You're wanting to spend time with the mentor, because this, more than anything else, will help you to understand more in life and allow you to turn around and have a great impact on other people.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to this when I've been told advice from you and I was like really resistant to it. I didn't experience any change. I had the same feelings of frustration, of anger, or whatever sort of emotion I was going through, or sadness. And then when I went and started doing what you were, really listening to what you were saying and thinking about the advice that you'd give me and actually doing it, then I actually changed. And a lot of the big difference is that if I'm not actually taking the advice and I'm not actually listening to what you're telling me as my mentor, then I really have no benefit. Does that make sense?
Completely understand. And I have become a better mentor by mentoring you, Chuck. And these tips may or may not have been developed by my understanding of how to mentor you.
Got it.
Just kidding. Actually, these tips are really from me learning to be mentored and me realizing from my own life how I've reacted when people tried to give me things I didn't want.
Right.
Everybody is always a mentor and a mentee in their own life. And so, it's the same with me. I'm continually learning how to have a more positive impact, continually realizing how I have no influence, impact, or control over other people.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to really grasp, especially from the culture that we live in, where the main thing that's taught in business schools is influence.
You got it. And especially parents. Parents are having the most difficult time switching up their parenting to the next generation, which the new generation realizes no one can control me. And parents have a tough time with realizing that as well.
Yeah, going from obedience to just letting them be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jacob. I appreciate your answers. And, that sort of answer helps me to realize that I can do positive things in my life, but people do determine whether or not they are positively impacted or impacted in another way. So thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you for listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. It would be great if you could take a moment to write us a review. For any questions, comments, or topics that you would like to have addressed on the show, email the team at team@leadaz.org. To learn more about the Leadership Society of Arizona, visit us at leadaz.org.